Welcome back to the Wisdom to Wealth podcast. This is the podcast where I interview the wealthiest entrepreneurs and business owners in the world to share their journey from zero to wealth. This is a special solo episode where I'm going to be sharing my journey on how I went from an employee to an entrepreneur, how I shifted my mindset, right? I had to go from being paid like an employee to actually being an entrepreneur and working in my business and building it to six figures, right? So who am I? I'm Shamar Star Cox, TV producer and marketing coach. My goal is to help 6 and 7 figure business owners get seen and get paid by creating binge-worthy content on social media. I am also the host of the Convert Content to Cash Challenge. So if you want to learn how to create content that sells, feel free to DM the word challenge accepted on Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, so that I can personally send you an invite. Oh, hey, thank you all for joining. Hey, Christina, I see you snuck in here on Instagram. You all can feel free to use the chat. You can feel free to drop comments in the chat, especially if the story resonates with you. But again, I'm sharing how I went from an employee to an entrepreneur, right? The money mindset shift that's needed so that you can hit the multiple six figures in your business, right? So a lot of you may know my story, so I'll just give a bit of it. But I remember back in 2020, I was working as a television producer. So 2019, 2018, 2017. But January 2020, God had called me to quit my job. And that was very scary because in my mind, I was like, oh, it is afternoon. Thank you for correcting me, Christina. Oh my goodness, it definitely is afternoon, right? So I was working at my 9 to 5. I was working at a television network. It was a very popular television network. And I remember being so frustrated in my position because I was underpaid, overworked, undervalued, right? And so I knew that I couldn't stay in this position, but I felt myself settling. Anyone ever felt that way where you're working a 9 to 5, you're working your corporate job, and you know that you should be doing more, but you feel yourself settling? I just kept thinking, this is as far as I'm going to go. That's it. And I might as well just stay settled in this. But God wouldn't let me stay in this settlement. That's the thing. Like he was like, honey, it's time for you to get out. Yep. Christina's like, yep, I've been there. Right. So there was, yep. Etheridge Curtis. Am I saying your name right? If I'm saying your name right, just drop a yes in the chat, right? So Etheridge Curtis said the same thing, or right, that they've been there as well. And so here I am now, January 2020, and God says to me, "Quit your job." And I'm like, "Ain't nobody quitting their job, God." Like, oh, thank you. Right? Like, this sounds bizarre. Just because I'm underpaid, undervalued, overworked, and I'm settling, don't mean that the way to fix this is to quit my job, right? That's what I'm thinking to myself. But he was right. I really did have to quit my job. So when I did quit my job, I didn't have another lined up. So I wasn't like people who had the money in their bank account. I wasn't like others where I had another job lined up. I had friends in high places that could hire me. That was not my story, right? Like I quit my job and I only had $8,000 in my bank account and I had no idea what was going to happen next. I mean, it was so bad that the following month, February 2020, I remember pacing my floor back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and saying to God, like, I gotta go back. I said, I gotta go back. I gotta go back because at my former job, they actually offered me to come back. They said, at any time you want to come back, feel free to come back. So if you have an open door and you don't see money coming in, you see the money leaving your bank account, but you don't see it increasing, it's tempting to go back to security, right? But God said to me in that moment, you can't go back, you can only go forward. And I didn't know what that looked like or what that meant, but I'm very happy that I did not go back because as I walked by faith and I followed the steps that God was sharing with me, it led me to building a six-figure business online using social media. And now I help hundreds of business owners, entrepreneurs, and coaches to do the same thing, right? Here's one thing that I learned along the journey, and that is marketing is the lifeline of your business. Marketing is the lifeline of your business. If you know that, I want you to drop that in the chat. Marketing is the lifeline of my business. There are a lot of business owners, especially when they're starting out online, that they don't realize how important marketing is until they're not seeing the sales that they want to see. Especially if you come in, you're already at six figures and you want to scale to multiple six figures. The only way you're going to scale is if more people see you. The only way that more people will see you is if you actually have a marketing strategy or marketing system in place, right? So I learned that very early on. Marketing is the lifeline of your business. Why? Because when I launched my business, I already had a social media following. And I can't say that it was my strategy because it wasn't. All I know is that in 2020, fall 2020, God told me to start creating content full time. So from fall 2020 to fall 2021, I didn't realize it until now as I'm sharing the story. I'm like, wait a second. That was totally God. That entire year of me just posting content was building an audience. So my following was growing on TikTok, my following was growing on Instagram, and I had this audience that at a certain point they started going, "Are you selling something?" It was my TikTok audience that hit me up and was like, "Are you selling something? Because if you are, can you let us know what you're selling so we could buy?" And it never crossed my mind that in order for you to sell something, you need to have people to sell it to. Come on now. In order for you to sell something, you need to have people to sell it to. And so now I was ready to launch and I started teaching people how to shoot and edit their videos. And guess what? I had people to sell it to. So that's the first thing. When you're going from an employee mindset to an entrepreneur, when you're an employee, there's a sales team and a marketing team taking care of that for the company that you work for. Yes, thank you all for writing that in the chat, right? So when you work for a 9 to 5, when you work for corporate, there's a dedicated sales department and a marketing department that's taking care of that for you. When you're the entrepreneur, when you're the CEO, that all falls on you. How many of you felt that? When you were working in your corporate jobs, you didn't have to worry about getting clients, how to get the clients, how to do the marketing to get the clients, how to put the business out there in a way that's going to get eyes on it, right? You didn't have to think about that. But as soon as you became the entrepreneur, that became the first set of skills that you had to learn, right? All we wanted to do was teach people and help people and serve them. That's all we wanted to do when we started our business. And then we quickly recognized if there are no people, we ain't serving. And the only way for us to do that is to actually be seen. It's to actually have an audience that's there, right? So I had to learn how to build an audience. That's the first thing. And then the second thing, I then had to learn how to communicate my message to that audience, right? So it wasn't just get them in your business and start selling to them. I mean, get them in your business and they're going to buy. Like some of us, we have a mindset of if I post it, they will come. If I build it, they will come. But that's a movie. And that movie's called Field of Dreams. This is real life. And in real life, if you just build it and they don't know about it, they're not coming. There is no business out there that is thriving without marketing. You want to know how I know? Because you wouldn't have heard about it. Nobody knows about Joe Schmo down the block from where I live because he has no marketing. But as soon as I mention Nike, even if I mention Red Lobster or I mentioned Crab Shack, a lot of you are like, yeah, I've heard of those places before because of their marketing, right? So I had to quickly learn how to do marketing, even though I was the most apprehensive to it. I was afraid to do marketing. And I didn't want to teach people marketing because I didn't know fully what marketing was. And so let's actually put a definition of marketing. This is my definition of marketing. It is the ability to communicate in a very clear manner how you can help people. Like that's what marketing is. It is the ability to communicate in a very clear manner how you can help people. That's what marketing is, right? I think oftentimes if we don't have the definition, we think it's all these things. But that's just it at its baseline. And then now the next step is what type of marketing do I want to do? Some of you, you're doing word of mouth marketing, and that's okay. It'll get you to a certain level. Some of you are doing referral based marketing, and that's okay. It will get you a certain level, right? For me, what I do is I do social media marketing and specifically video marketing because I know that you can reach a lot of people in a short amount of time by just posting a video. I have seen it happen. I have gone viral 4 times, probably more than that, but that's all I can remember. 4 times posting videos. I've posted content at 7:30 in the morning. By 8 o'clock, at least 3,000 people have seen it. By the end of the week, at least hundreds of thousands of people have seen it, right? So that lets me know I can reach a lot of people in a short amount of time. So I had to understand what was the quickest way for me to serve my audience, right? Thank you so much, Ethrich Curtis said the ability to communicate in a clear manner how you can help people, right? That is the definition of marketing, right? So I had to understand How can I reach a large amount of people in a short amount of time? Sometimes when we're starting out, we're trying to reach a little bit amount of people in a long amount of time. But for me, because I wasn't working in a 9 to 5, and I already told you I only had $8,000 in my bank account, I couldn't reach a little bit amount of people in a long amount of time. I had to reach a lot of people in a short amount of time. And social media allowed me to do that, right? So that was it. Going from employee to entrepreneur, I had to understand there is no marketing department, no sales department. That is me. So I had to take care of all of that. The next thing that I had to understand is that I can no longer trade my time for money. Come on now. I can no longer trade my time for money. What do I mean by that? When I was an employee working at the television network, I was a salaried employee. Well, before I became salaried, I was working hour to hour. So every hour that I worked, I got paid for that hour, including overtime. Is anyone accustomed to that? Working hour to hour? So every hour you work, you get paid for it. And then they hired me full time. So then I became salaried, right? So still I was getting, they were accounting for my hours, but I can either work less hours or a short amount of hours and still get paid the same amount of money. Okay. Yep. Curtis is like, yep. Right. So as a salary employee, it didn't matter how many hours I worked, whether I worked more or worked less, I got paid a certain salary and I was good. I actually prefer salary because that means I can work less and still get paid the same amount of money. To me, that's genius, but whatever. Right. So I was accustomed to that. I'm going to give you my time and you will give me money. And because of that, I became dependent on it. It now became my security check. I expected that when I worked, I would get paid. That's a fair exchange, right? I work for you, you pay me. When I became the entrepreneur, that went out the window. I could work for weeks and not get paid. Come on, somebody. Let me clarify that. I could work for weeks and not get paid right away. So what happened was I started to understand a principle that is found in 2 Corinthians 9, verse 6. And it says, those who sow sparingly shall reap sparingly, and those who sow generously shall reap generously. So what I recognize is there are seasons for me to be sowing. What does that look like? That looks like me creating content, going live, and serving my audience. And during those seasons, I'm just planting seeds. Does anyone understand farming? Does anyone understand farming? Right? You just drop a yes in the chat if you understand farming. I'm starting to understand it a lot better. Even if you have a garden, maybe you have a garden and you are gardening, right? If you understand that, then you'll understand this concept. When you are planting something, okay, good. Christina said, yep, I understand it. When you're planting something, what do you need to plant? Like, what do you need to plant? There's a couple of things you're going to need in order to plant, right? Like you're going to need the seed, you're going to need the soil or the water, right? And you're going to need sunlight. Those are just the 3 bare minimums, right? The most important thing is the seed, because if you have the soil or the water and the sunlight, but you put nothing in the ground, what's going to come out? Anybody? If you have the seed or the water and you have the sun, but you put nothing in the ground, what's going to come out? Nothing. Because you sowed nothing, so you would reap nothing, right? Exactly. Yep. Like you sowed nothing, so you're going to reap nothing, right? So that's letting me know those who sow sparingly shall reap sparingly. But now, if you put a seed in the ground, depending on what kind of seed, you're going to be able to reap something. So if I put an apple seed in the ground, I'm going to reap an apple trees, right? If I put a pear seed in the ground, let me say mango, because I'm Jamaican, right? We love mangoes over here. When I put a mango seed in the ground, I am going to reap a mango tree, right? And so that let me know that as an entrepreneur, I'm not trading time for money anymore. I now have to adopt the mindset of a farmer or a gardener, which means I have to start sowing seeds into my audience. I have to take time to build an audience, and I have to take time to actually sow into them. Hey, Jason, how you doing? Right? To sow into them. How am I sowing into them? That's by me creating content that speaks directly to my audience. So that's not me creating any old content. Contrary to what a lot of social media gurus say, just get up and just start posting. You could do that, or you can get up and post strategically so that you can reap what you sow. right? Because if you just start posting just to post, you're going to reap any old thing. But if you post with a purpose, and that purpose is profits, guess what you're going to reap? Come on, somebody, write that in the chat. Hey, Renaya, didn't even see you there. If you post with a purpose, and that purpose is profits, guess what you're going to reap? You can just write it in the chat before I say it out loud. I know there's a delay. There's a little bit of a delay, right? So when you are posting, there we go. Curtis said it. You're going to reap profits. So I had to start posting content in a way that was going to help me to reap profits. So what type of content is that? That is educational content. But here's the difference. I'm teaching something that people want to buy. I'm not teaching any old thing. If I showed up just teaching them any old thing, here's how to dance. Here's how to do transitions. Here's how to do your hair. They may buy, but they weren't going to buy that for me because I don't even specialize in that. I had to teach the thing that will get them to buy from me, which was, here's how to create content that sells. Because they saw me do it. They watched me for an entire year build my audience on Instagram and TikTok with engaging video content, binge-worthy content. And then they started binging my content. So they're recognizing, they're like, oh, wait a second, there's a match here. She has great content that I love. She's teaching me how to create this great content that I love. Okay, let me go ahead and opt in, right? So that was the first thing. The second thing was speaking to their mindset. Come on now. I know we don't talk about this often, right? Oftentimes we hear things like hop on the latest trend, dance and entertain your audience, and all of those things have its place. But in order for your audience to buy from you, they have a certain mindset that they have right now that you got to help them to overcome. And by overcome, I mean your job as a marketeer is to help your audience make a buying decision. They're already coming to you thinking, I want to buy. So your content or how you show up as a marketeer is going to put them over the edge. All you're doing is being the confirmation for them. I'm going to say that one more time. All you're doing is being the confirmation for them. You're not going in and trying to talk to someone who's not interested in buying at all. You're talking to the person who's ready to buy, and your content just confirms that they were ready to buy and now they can buy from you. That's it, right? So when I understood those things, educational content of what they want to buy, mindset content to help them make a buying decision. The last type of content was sales content to let them know how they can buy, right? And so now I started posting content. If you want to accomplish this, I can help you do that in this amount of days. All you have to do is opt in right here. That's it. Just as simple as that. And when I started doing that, do you know that in 2022, I made $21,000 for the entire year? $21,000. That's not too bad. Y'all not giving me enough praise. $21,000 for an entire year, right? After, this is 2 years after I quit my job. I only had $8,000 in my bank account. I didn't know what to do next. I had just invested in coaching. I probably invested about $50,000 in coaching. I will share that story later on where the money came from. But after sowing into these coaches, thank you, Curtis, and after sowing into my audience, 2022, I made $21,000 total, right? So I was probably making about $5,000 to $6,000 every 2 to 3 months. And then suddenly in 2023, from the same content that I was putting out, and I introduced live video. So I was testing my live video all of 2022, but people weren't buying yet. It took me 6 months to sell a 5K offer on a live video. And that's some serious work. But 2023 hit and I made $30,000 in 3 months. Come on now. 2022, I made $21,000 in 12 months. In 2023, I made $30,000 in 3 months. What shifted? What shifted was the fact that what I sold in 2021, it started to come back. It started to come back. When I understood I was no longer trading time for money, but what I was doing was I was waiting for time to mature so that I could reap. In 2023, I was able to reap massively. So I didn't get discouraged when I didn't see the money pouring in. And here's the thing, like, it is so easy to get discouraged on social media. You see everybody doing better than you. It's like you doing all this hard work and this person, they making six figures here. This person made six figures in a day. And it can make you feel like you're not doing enough. But exactly, Curtis said it. Curtis said you reap what you sowed. But the reality is those people who are making that much money in a short amount of time, it is just their harvest season. They are reaping what they sowed years prior. Are they saying that? No. Like even in my messaging, I will tell you, I hit six figures in 1 year. Here's how I hit six figures in 1 year. But how long did it actually take me? It really did happen in 1 year. In 2023, we were making 8 to 10K months. So we made $117,000 in 2023. But how long did it actually take me to do it? 2 years. It took 2 years of sowing and serving in order for me to reap $117,000 in 1 year. And oftentimes you don't hear people talking like that. You will hear them saying like, here's how you can make 10K in a day. Here's how you can make 17,000 in a month. Yeah, I make 17,000 a month too. But do you know how long it took for me to make that 17,000 in a month? Sure, you can say 1 month, but actually there was prep work beforehand. And oftentimes we try to ignore the prep work because we think as soon as we start posting, as soon as we start selling, that we're going to bring in the clients. When in all actuality, that's not true. This is something that I teach all my clients, which is you got to test, pivot, test, pivot. Come on, test, pivot, test, pivot. Come on. You got to test your messaging, test your content, and pivot all of it. Pivot, because just because you have a life-changing offer, just because you have a life-changing service, doesn't mean that people are going to get it right away, especially if you don't know how to clearly communicate it, right? As we said, the definition of sales is the ability to communicate in a clear manner how you can help people. Some of you have amazing businesses, you have amazing services, and the only reason why you're not seeing what you deserve yet, the sales that you deserve, the clients that you deserve yet, is because you haven't learned how to clearly communicate how you can help people. And so in 2024 and 2025, I have been working on clearly communicating how I help people. And every time I change my message, I know that I have to test how to clearly communicate how I help people. Because if I don't do that, then I'm not going to bring them in. And how can you test that you have the right people? By the people who are coming. I'm going to share one more thing and then we'll wrap it up. But whoever you call will come. That's a principle. Whoever you call will come. You will know if your messaging and your marketing is working by who's coming. And where did I get this from? I got this from Jesus. I teach Bible marketing secrets because I recognize how Jesus was able to grow a large following and then convert those followers into believers. And so I said, okay, Holy Spirit, teach me how to do the same thing. And so what I recognize with Jesus is, this is found in Matthew 11, verse 28. This is after he came out of the wilderness, after he got baptized, he came out the water and he said this very clear messaging. Come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. And I was like, wow. Okay, now it's time to test. So that was the message. He called his people. Remember what I said, whoever you call will come. So he was calling people who are weary and people who are heavy laden. And then he told them how he can help them. I will give you rest. And he communicated that very clearly. So let's test if it worked. Curtis said, yes, it did work. It did work. Because how do we know? The people who came to him were weary. The people who came to him were blind. They were invalids. They were bedridden. Some of them, their family members had to come because some of the people had fallen asleep or died. One lady was bleeding for 12 years. They were weary and heavy laden. They were broken. They were on the verge of giving up and quitting. And here comes Jesus saying, come to me. And because he did that, the herds came. Thousands of people came. And I started to recognize that when it comes to marketing, it's not just about posting the content and hoping that I reach one person. How many of you have heard that before? where people are like, oh, well, I'm a post, and if I could just reach one person, what? Why are you settling? You weren't called to reach one person. You were called to reach the masses, just like Jesus. Jesus didn't come off his throne to reach one person. That's bizarre. For all of that, he could just stay in heaven. Jesus came to reach the masses. And so when it comes to our marketing, we have to understand when we want to scale, we have to scale our marketing efforts to reach the masses. Not one person, not our family, not our cousins, not our best friends, the masses. And in order for you to do that, you have to be positioned in a place for them to see you. For Jesus, he went town to town and he probably stood in the town square. Sometimes he was off in a field and the people heard about it and they came. For us, it's social media. Position yourself on Instagram, on TikTok, on YouTube, on LinkedIn, on Pinterest, your platform of choice. Just position yourself and then start speaking and watch how they start to come. And when I noticed that the people were coming, I said, okay, let me make sure I give them something that they are going to love and it's going to keep them coming back for more. And when I understood these concepts, I was able to go from employee to entrepreneur. But here's the thing. We don't just stop at entrepreneur, because in 2024, I had to go from entrepreneur to CEO. That's a story for another time. Let me tell you, if you trust God with your business, you will go from levels to levels, right? There's a scripture that says we go from faith to faith and from glory to glory. You do the same thing in your business, but there has to be a trust factor in order for you to consistently walk the path. And then there has to be a super hyper focus on something. And that super hyper focus should be on generating wealth. And you generate wealth by serving others. It's the only way. The only way you will generate wealth is if you serve others. And so I'm going to wrap up with this. I want to share the formula for wealth. And then I'll host another episode on breaking down this formula. But I was enjoying some time with God, right? Indulging in his presence. And I was thinking to myself, I want to understand the formula to wealth. And what came to mind was mindset and skill set. And I said, okay, but that can't be the only thing. Like something is missing. And the reason why these came to mind is because when I was researching wealth, what kept coming up for the people who have the wealth, and I was studying like Myron Golden, Layla Homorzi, and so much others, what they kept saying was you needed to shift your mind, right? So that's the mindset piece. And then they kept saying, then you have to do the work. That's the skill set piece. But there was one more piece that was missing. And I got this from Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which was asset. So the formula for wealth is mindset, skill set, and asset. All of that equals wealth. What does that mean? You have to have a mind that is shifted from poverty to prosperity. That is shifted from I can't to how can I. That is shifted from no matter what happens, I'm making sales by any means necessary. It is a mindset that God has put me here and he is going to supply my needs as I'm walking forward. If you have a mindset of sadness, of depression, of poverty, you will never acquire wealth. You will remain in a space of, man, this is never working. Oh my goodness, it feels so hard. So in order to have this mindset for wealth, there's a lot of healing that has to take place. After the mind is made up, next is the skill set. What skills do I need to develop for wealth? Marketing is a skill. Sales is a skill. And those two are essential. Without them, you don't have a business, you have a hobby. And it's true, I know, because the IRS told me that when I wasn't making any sales. And then the last thing, the mindset, the skill set, the last thing, in order for you to actually acquire the wealth, is to have assets. Now, those assets could be financial, whether you are trading stocks and options, whether you are doing real estate investments, but it also could be creative, whether you are creating courses and you have a coaching program, because now you have something to sell. So if my mind is made up on wealth And if I have the skills for marketing and selling, and then I have something to sell to my audience, that's the asset. Guess what? Wealth is inevitable. Wealth is inevitable. So that's what we have today for this podcast episode. I hope that you were all blessed by my story on how I went from employee to entrepreneur, the mindset shift you need so that you can acquire your wealth, whether it is going from 6 figures to multiple 6 figures, or multiple 6 figures to 7 figures, or 7 figures to 8 figures. There's always going to be a shift in your mind so that you can acquire wealth. You all have a wonderful day today. We will be back tomorrow with another episode of Wisdom to Wealth. We have our podcast Monday through Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern. We always have a powerful guest that's going to join us to share their wealth journey. I'll see you again.